Okay, so our first critique submission, we're going with here. The question was, with these sort of 2D cartoony shapes, how do we make them more 3D? How do we make them more dynamic? And I think that's a really, really good question. Actually, I thought about this a lot all night about doing. I think it's going to take like a full course to teach that because it's something that I still struggle to understand, but it's something that I want to push in my art. So what I'm going to try to do with this is just give a few simple pointers over the artwork here, just ways to maybe push that with art. Now, I know with this person in particular, they told me that they were trying to do style, but they want to still be more 3D and more dynamic. So, with this style, actually, it's very cartoony, and I think that it kind of works as a flat 2D shape, anyways. But we can add a few things here with the drawings to kind of push that over the top. So let's just go in and look at it and see what we can do here. The first thing I've kind of noticed with this one especially is before you want to push your artwork to look more 3D, I think just getting things like proportions right and just getting different angles right. One thing you can do, especially with digital, is you can kind of flip your canvas. I know you're working traditional here, but you can always take a picture with your phone, like you're going to upload it to social media, and whenever you see that image on your phone, you'll almost always be able to see mistakes. So we're going to create a new layer over the top of this. And the one thing I'm noticing right now is the forearm is just way too long, right? If we have things like this, then I think it's not going to matter about 3D shapes or dynamics because people are going to notice when different things are off. And this is okay because it's a learning process, right? So we're just going to work on fixing that a little bit. Actually, we're going to duplicate this layer because I don't want to fuck up the original. So what we can do here is we can I would kind of cut that arm down right there, but because you want it over the entire body, actually, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're not organized at all. So we're looking at the body as cylinders, squares, rectangles, different solid shapes, right? Underneath here are going to be all these different solid shapes. And if we want to start looking at things in 3D, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to start seeing things like this more often. Right? So this is a little bit messy right now, but this is kind of the point of looking at things in a 3D frame of mind. And I have a little bit of video on this, but I'm going to have to make a much better one. So one thing I do when I was studying this stuff, and I still do it actually, is I take these 3D shapes and I actually draw contour lines around them to kind of help my mind realize that these are cylinders and not just flat shapes. Same way with this, the body. We can still draw these lines that kind of curve around the shape that it would be, right? Now we don't need to get all detailed on this too much because like I said, this is still like a very 2D drawing. It works in this style, and if we put too much on that, then we're going to take away the charm of it. So that's another thing to think about when you're wanting to make your stuff look a little bit more realistic, I guess, when you want to go 3D. What style and what feel do you want to achieve with this? In this case, there are just some things, like I said, with this particular drawing, there are just some things that you'd want to fix. You'd kind of want you can do this too actually with your clothes to give it a more 3D look is you can kind of give it some wrinkles in there. And there's a lot of push and pull principles in clothes. I sometimes use a lot of shorthand when I'm doing cartooning stuff, that means there's wrinkles. Like I almost always see a wrinkle on the side of the shoulder like that. It's a small wrinkle. It doesn't need much detail. It's fairly not realistic at all. But if you go into it and you start looking at a lot of different cartoony styles, you want to keep it simple too. So there's a lot of bendy areas whenever you have a bend, and I kind of throw in these little curves too, right? So like you have a cuff here. You have the cuff of the hand. So you did a really good job making it go around, but you can add a little bit of shading underneath it, right? And like I said, these little pinch points and pull points. I'm wearing black, so you can't really tell. This is a bad example. This is a bad example. But these little pinch points and pull points are what going to give you your some of your volume too. Another thing that you can do with this is to give it that weight on these undersides. You can give them a little bit more shadow too, especially if you have your light source. If your light source is coming from here, here's our little sun. Then give these undersides a little bit of shadow too. You can do it to whatever degree you want. This is a little bit too thick from where I would go, but it's just a little something you can throw in there. And for me personally, I would probably throw a little curve in to the top of the shirt, right? Where it's going to kind of sag down. Whenever it comes to structure like this, I've still made probably the forearm a little bit too big, right? But think of those 3D shapes underneath here. And think of the mood he's in. So he's kind of looking really distraught, right? Don't be afraid to like kind of throw, don't be afraid to model this either. It's like his shoulder here is kind of down, but I think if he's just kind of in a almost like a half crying pose, his shoulders are going to kind of be up. He's going to be kind of be sulking. So we kind of bring his shoulder up a little bit to add a little bit to that gesture. Still trying to keep it in a simple cartoony style, right? And like I said, these folds along the clothing will really kind of help sell the 3D space on it. Give a little shadow on the inside of this arm. I know you didn't draw that, but that's something to maybe add in. And this is going to go back to some of the anatomy here, is we have like this ear shape, right? So the first thing we kind of want to do is get the shape of this head, see where it's going. You have a lot of stuff for your style. You have a lot of stuff fairly well lined up. Um, I would kind of work on the eyes a little bit. To see kind of where you're going, but we want to keep we still want to keep your style, right? So the one thing here too, when I drew this center line, right, is we're trying to keep things still lined up. We're trying to keep, even though it's a cartoony style, we're trying to keep what we know about facial structure is still there. Like all our rules are still kind of going to be in place. So with this ear, we can make it look more simple and more like an ear too, and still fit in that area where it's going to go to the top of the eye and the bottom of the nose, right? And this eye, we're gonna cut down a little bit. Because it's crossing the bridge of that nose. So when we have everything kind of lined up, the bridge of that nose is going to cut that eye a little bit shorter. Like it's not going to cross over the middle of the face. You know what I mean? Even if you don't draw the bridge of that nose, keep it on that other side of that face. So one thing here too with the face, I like that you're using these shapes that aren't just like it's not just like a circle, right? It's not just a circle or a sphere or anything like that. It's got its own character to it. You did a lot with this other character too. This is the second character she submitted, and there's a lot going on there too. And I like that, and a lot of it's got its own charm. But let me feel like you still have that bone structure underneath. So keep that thing in mind. Like I said, keep that middle of the face where that nose goes, where that nose would go up through the face. Make sure nothing crosses over that center line. So the way I draw noses, you kind of have a nostril kind of going on the side here, but the way I draw noses is not anatomically correct at all. But this is what I do to kind of give them shape. Is I kind of let you see the underside of that nostril. Um, and I try to draw in the other side. Sometimes I'll throw in some shading on this when I draw the nostril that you can't really see. It's you gotta remember to work with the lighting direction you're getting to. So we gotta remember like his head shape, right? We gotta remember his jawline coming down from here. And if we want to curve that cheekbone way out in a stylistic manner, I think we gotta keep our shapes. We gotta keep our line work really good. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but in this case, let's keep everything lined up. Like you have the jaw going kind of way out here, right? So it's pushing like all of his features off to the side. And so one thing you asked about, so now we're kind of getting back into lining things up a little bit more. When we flip it, it's probably gonna be off a little ways. But these are some things that I do with my own work. Is try to keep some of these guidelines in there, right? Maybe if you have to do it on another layer, you can do it on another layer. But then if we want to add a little bit of 3D volume into it, a really simple thing here is we're going to shade under the neck, right? There's almost always going to be some shadow under that because there's very little bounce light unless we're looking up at him or the light's coming straight up. There's not going to be a ton of light that gets there, and that's a really easy way to me, that's one of the easiest ways to add volume in there. Now we have, all right, so we're kind of on this, right? Now, one trick for the hairline that I usually do is I kind of draw this shape, and that'll keep my hairline in there. Keep it lined up center. See, like I think you could even start the cheekbone up here, actually. But it's kind of up to you. It's kind of up to you. And then you can add like a little lip. I know my mouth here is way off center. But this is a little thing that I do on the side. Is I add maybe that little curve for a lip there. We can zoom in a little bit for you guys too. So the mouth usually has like an area right here. It's going to come through there, right? And that's kind of just what we're showing. Since he doesn't look like he's that old, we're going to keep the other line away from it. Because we add too many lines, we're going to age our characters, right? So since he's just kind of talking, or he's kind of maybe grimacing, I would just give him like that little bit there. If you want to give him a little bit of a cheekbone, that sometimes can add some 3D to it. Like I said, all these little undershadows on the ear. You've got the ear hole, whatever it's called. The fucking ear hole. You got there. I know his head is not right. But since we're just gonna do this quick. Right, so now he's already looking a little bit more 3D. Just some of those real small changes, right? Just some of those little shadow areas, some of the line thicknesses on the underside of stuff. I didn't really use a whole lot of line variation on this yet even. Just right now I'm just kind of using shadows that are in play. And the same will go with your hair. Just adding little bits of shadow or line thickness, like right in here, right through this side, right? We just keep all those things in mind where that light source is going to be hitting, and that's going to make everything look a little bit more 3D. But like I said, the most essential thing, and I'll try to make a course on this. That's going to be a lot better than me rambling on about these things. But it's just going to be a lot about seeing 3D shapes. Like you see the bridge of the nose should be here, right? So your eye, your eye's not going to necessarily curve down like that. It's going to be sitting, a little bit more straight, and you can still get that sorrow in there. You can get that sorrow. The whole look with the sorrow is you're just lifting that upper or that lower eyelid, right? And you're usually lifting an eyebrow. So give your eyes that volume too. Don't just cut them flat, Like over here on the side, you're gonna have a little bit of curve, right? Like I said, top eyebrow usually has a little bit more thickness than the bottom one, just kind of the way it is. Like I said, keep that facial structure in mind. If you want to throw out a bigger chin like that, make sure that cheekbone is right there to curve in. Okay, so here's your first example, right? And I think the second example, as I was looking over it, I think it's just a lot of the same ideas. Like we won't have to do too much on it. I know this doesn't add a lot of dynamics, which is what you kind of wanted, but these are still poses too. Dynamics are going to come much more with motion and much more with expression. If you wanted to put dynamics on these, your your second drawing actually feels quite a bit more dynamic because you've got a lot of the right ideas. You've got a lot of these sort of tapered shapes, right? You've got a lot of curves going on. If you want dynamics, like a lot of these shapes, these work. These work really well for dynamics. This is great. You see how you have this motion back here? You have sort of that motion that's kind of pointing away. And then you have this flat motion. It gives so much movement and so much speed going back there, right? Like that one works great. If you want to give it a more 3D look, like with your band right here, maybe you just get a smaller line right below there. And maybe you do this, give a little curve where that hat might go to the top, right? So here's the top, here's the sides. We don't need to show all of it in this case. Sometimes we can just get away with one line. Or we can even fill that in with black too. Depending on where our light source is, right? Clip Studio has this awesome lasso fill tool. That would be great in real life because I could stop inking. So it gives us that quick fill feature. And then we can maybe like hatch along these edges a little bit too. It's just something you have to experiment and figure out with what you like, right? This is assuming the sun's or the light source is going to hit up here, right? So you're probably going to lose all this into that darkness. But it gives you a little bit of that volume too. Maybe you lose a little bit of that. You definitely lose this bottom part into it. Maybe you lose a little bit on the brims here because you'd have that little lip, right? That little lip on the hat. And the rest of it, we're going to go back into the same stuff we talked about. So, like where's his mouth going? Where's his ears? You've got him way up here, right? So make sure you're drawing those. Make sure you're following that flow. Even though you want him to have kind of this big chin area, make sure it's kind of, centering up, right? And that means the mouth. We can shade under that lip too. I know this is going to take away from that sort of that line arty, cartoony bear style you have, which you may not want to do. But these are just some ideas that I use. Right, so I wouldn't go that far out with the lip. I'd keep it kind of in the middle. And you don't even need to always draw all of it. Like if you want to get those curves in there, you can set them out. You can set them out a little further than the lip, right? And still have them curve into the nose. Like we talked about, that little area around the nose and the mouth. I really love the expressions though you got going. You have some really great expressions on some of these characters. Um, like I said, here the clothing. Just another little trick is just give it that second line, and you can do that underneath the chin with that shadow. Remember to center everything up on the body there. So off the collars and off the shoulders, these are another little kind of cheat lines that I use, right? You'll see me do those a lot, these little pinch lines. Um, and maybe because we know we got the chest here, right? If it's not a super thick, heavy coat he's got on. So more pinch lines. Those are just little cheats. They don't take any thought to them. They're almost like shorthand when you're writing notes, you know? Just things that you remember, right? But yeah, these are some just some little pointers to start with. It's just you can do a lot with your line weights. Even if you want a style that doesn't have this much this much shading in it, you can still do a lot with your line weights. So think about that. Think about adding those in. Think about adding these a little bit more detail sometimes to your clothing. Think about curving around the areas that clothing goes to, right? I can't even draw an arrow. I'm teaching art. So think about all these little things. Um, they'll just add up. But mainly, from what I can tell, is I think you're going to need to learn a little bit more in regards to structure before you can really push. Because once you learn more of the structure with these, even though they're cartoony, your expressions and your characters are on point. I love them. They bleed through, and you have the character design down, and it's so good because that's just gonna you have that storytelling in place, and storytelling is such a big part of art that you can get away with a lot of mistakes, right? And you don't have a lot of mistakes here. You're trying a new style, and you're trying to refine that, but you can get away with a lot of storytelling here because of the things that you already have in place, or you can get away with a lot of anatomy stuff because of things you have in place, right? People can enjoy your drawing because they can get a message from it. You can use the most perfect references and the most perfect style you want, and without feeling to it, it's not going to connect with anybody. So you've already got a lot of feeling in there. If you just want to refine these and get more style to them, just remember those shapes that I think you're already using them. You know, you're already using these curves and these arrows type of points. You know, when you do these folds, you know, like these, I used to kind of just go straight with them, but that's not really a dynamic fold, right? What you did here was really good too. And you can use little things like hatch lines too. They don't have to be like major. I also add a little bit of sometimes I'll add a little bit of markups on areas, and that kind of gives it a little bit of speed, a little bit of motion too. So like if this is a heavy piece of cloth, whatever that collar's made out of, then we really want to sell it with a little bit thicker line underneath, right? And if this is just in general a heavy outfit, let's make these folds a little bit fatter. Maybe less folds, but fatter folds, right? So there you go. There's a couple little bit of tips for you. I hope that helped somewhat. Um, Thank you guys for bearing with me on making these videos. If you guys got any comments or suggestions on these, or if you got stuff that you want me to crit, send it to me and let me know. And yeah, I'll do my best to get these done. I really like doing these. I really like helping you guys out. But I'm new to this, so I'm new to this, so it's a lot of trial and error at this point. I probably should have made these crits before we did the video, instead of doing it on the fly. That way I'm not stumbling over it and it would be like half the time. But I hope this helped you guys out a lot. I hope this taught you guys something. Let me know. I'm going to share the person who submitted this. I'm going to share her info after this video. Go check her out. Go give her some love. I like what she's trying to do. So that's going to kind of be it for today. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts, suggestions, and I appreciate any subscriptions, likes, and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching along. And till next time, I don't have a catchphrase. So yeah, stop being greedy. Just go. Why are you still here? Go. 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 All right, later.